All right, so today's topic is unit number 32, correcting learners. And let's take a start from here. Anuradhi, you are there?
Yes, sir.
All right. So anyhow, I'm doing the recording, so I will record it. Those who are not here, they can take the recording later on, okay?
Okay.
As we have to finish the topics. So today's topic is unit 32, correcting learners. This is the
Yes.
one we have to do, right?
Uh, Unit 33 is giving feedback.
This one we did?
Yes. 32 BB.
Okay. So then we will do the unit 33. Your papers have arrived.
Hmm.
Yeah. So 15 exam we will conduct, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now this is the feedback, unit 33. In the end, when we close the whole things, feedback is the last thing which we give, okay? What is giving feedback? First of all, feedback is giving information to someone about their learning or showing them that you have understood or not what they have said. So feedback is about their performance, whether something during the learning process they have understood or not, and how far they have understood it and how much they haven't. That's what is all about the feedback. And if you remember, we have to give feedback always positive.
Yes.
In the classroom, teachers can give feedback to learners and learners can give feedback to the teacher. It is both ways. When teachers give feedback, uh, when teachers give feedback to learners, they give them information about learning. Teachers' feedback can focus on learners' language or skills, the ideas in their work, their behavior, their attitude to learning, or their progress. So what happens, teachers feedback is based on the learning area of the language or the skills what they do. Secondly, it's also about the behavior of the student, how they behave in the class, and it's also about their attitude to learning, whether they are keen in the learning, whether they are taking interest in the learning or not. That is also part of the feedback. Sometimes we give feedback to the whole class. At other times, we give feedback to small groups or individual learners. So it depends. Whole class feedback, like nothing to hide. Sometimes a small group. Why? Because the rest of the class might be okay. Only you want to point out certain things to a particular group of students. So that group you separate and then you give feedback to it. And sometimes it is like individual. There might be one or two student or one student, they need to be given feedback and the rest is okay. So it depends. Okay, you have to decide on it. We can give oral feedback or written feedback. The purpose of feedback are to motivate learners. Now that is the main thing here. What's the purpose of feedback? It is motivation for the learners. They need to be motivated based on your feedback rather than they should be demotivated. So you have to give positive kind of feedback in where you can point out what they're supposed to do also and appreciate also them for the work they have done. So usually teachers, they only focus on what they're supposed to do, the student, and they don't give the feedback based on something good they have done to appreciate that. So it should be in both ways. When learners give feedback to each other, an aspect of their learning, No, motivate learners. Here, this point. To encourage learner autonomy and to help learners understand what their problems are and how they can improve. So motivation is there in your feedback. Anu, you have to motivate them. You have to encourage their autonomy, independence. Anu, you are there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Okay. You are the only students there, so just that's why.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. Encourage learner autonomy and to help learners understand what their problems are and how they can improve. You have to point out their problems in their learning styles, and then you need to give them the guidance also how to improve that. It's not only to point out the problems. Next one is when learners give feedback to each other on aspect of their learning, this is called peer feedback. Learners, they also give feedback to each other to check that how they are. So that is called peer feedback. Learners can also give feedback to teacher, for example, on different aspects of course and lessons, whether these lessons were interesting for them, whether the course was productive, they have improved something, so they can give. But that learners should be quite matured in that. Otherwise, commonly, small children of the primary or preschool, they cannot give feedback on that. Right. Learners can also give feedback to teacher, for example, on different aspects of course and lessons, such as materials, methodology, methods and procedures, and activities used in the class. All that. How did they find the activities? Were these activities helpful for them to understand the topic and to understand the things which were taught there? So based on that, what sort of activity was needed? Already the one which the methodology you have applied, it was easy for them and it made them the lesson understood very well. So this sort of thing, if the feedback can come from the learners to the teacher. Now we will go further and see here a key concept. Now, for example, oral, example and focus and purpose. Oral, when we say, these are the things, Anu, orally you can tell to the student or the parents about that. Well done, that was very good. It was much better than last time. You really thought about the presentation. You can give oral feedback, a positive one in this way. So even you can just memorize these things and note it down with you, which you can appreciate the student while they do some sort of performance on anything. Focus is progress, effort, achievement. You can express yourself in something's progress is there, some effort they have put to do something, or they have achieved something. Purpose, encouraging the learner and telling her she did well. Okay. Oral, this is also oral. Have another look at the number 4. There is a problem with spelling, and I think there are more than 2 people. Language and content. Regarding that, when you want to point out and give a feedback during lesson is going on. So identifying where there was a problem and prompting what the learners need to do to correct that own answer. Next, oral. Let's look at the new structure on the board. Again, I think some of you have misunderstood how we use it. It's for the language. When you are going to explain them on the board, something overall mistakes are there. Reviewing problematic language area with the whole class in an encouraging way. Next, written way also you give feedback, mostly writing that in the notebooks or in the report card. But this is mostly for the notebook. What an amazing story. You have used the adjectives very well this time. But there were a few problems with past tense. Have a look at the irregular verb list at the back of the textbook. So it's content, ideas, language, both strength and weaknesses of the student are shown in this feedback. Where it is giving a personal response to the piece of work in order to encourage the learner, identifying a positive aspect of the work, adjective, and also give us exact information about one problem area and about where the learner could find useful, coherent material. You're not only pointing out the area, what they're supposed to do, but also you are pointing out where they can find the material to improve that and work on it. So it will continue, and let's see whether in the written way or oral way, what else we can give in the feedback. These feedbacks, whatever these dialogues are, it just need to be noted down with you, and you can utilize it in different ways. Oral. You have made good progress in all your work this month. Your written work is much more accurate. Language and progress regarding that, it is informing the learners of her progress and identifying an area where particular progress has been made, encouraging. So likewise, written one, B 70% looked at the uh, have a look at grammar section 5 at the back of the course book and check again the difference in meaning between the past simple and the past perfect. It is focusing on language. Purpose is giving a grade and informing the learner of what the problem was with their work and telling them exactly what they need to do, when they need to review, and how. Last one is the oral. You have done the pair work activities quite well this week, but I heard too much Spanish and not enough English. Like they were doing the activities and here they speak Sinhala more rather than English. So there was language achievement and behavior. Now here the behavior is also included there. Encouraging learner, but also informing them about inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate behavior, why? Because they were talking in Sinhala and they were doing the activity which they're supposed to do in English. Monitoring students' behavior over several lessons to give feedback on changes, for example, improvement in behavior or worsening of behavior. Right. Now, further, they say teachers can also elicit feedback from their learners. Teachers also can get feedback from the learners. This feedback can give information on whether learners like what they are doing, whether they are interested in the material or activities, or whether they are having problems with the language. Learners can also make suggestions for materials and activities to use. Teachers often use questionnaire or learners' diaries to find out information from their learners. In learning diaries, students write their feelings or comments on various aspects of teaching and learning as guided by the teacher. For example, diaries usually, but anyhow, if not exactly if you are keeping the diary, but you need to have the record of the progress of the students, what they are good at, what they are not, okay, and all these things to have a record in order to see that, for example, you are working with one class for the whole year, what you learn about that, that was there any kind of thing which is you applied your methodology and it didn't work in that way, then you change it. So all these things, plus along with that, the students progress and achievement also need to be mentioned in that. Okay. Okay, for example, lesson content, activities, methodology, their own learning styles. Now, I hope it is clear to you now what is lesson content, what is our activities, what is methodology. and their own learning styles. All right. Yeah, because we have discussed that over the time, discussing different things. Diaries can be written in L1 or in the target language. Now, if it is not possible for you that the diary you can maintain in the English because certain thing you cannot express well in that, so you can maintain that in Sinhala as well. Diaries are collected by the teacher on a regular basis. The teacher reads the comments and writes something in response to the content of what he is read. Now, diaries are two kind of. One diary is the teacher's diary, one diary is from the student one. Student one is that like they express themselves about the different things the teacher is doing in the lesson, the method of teaching of the teacher, the material which is used there, the supplementary material which is used there, the activities which are done there. So all that the student can give feedback on it. So they may not be that much good at the English language to support their argument or the support their points in the language wise. So they can write in Sinhala or in Tamil, whatever way is easy for them. Right. Next one is learners' diaries are not read by other learners or by other teachers. In this way, teachers or learners can give and receive feedback within a safe and secure context. Usually, this kind of thing, the learners' diaries, this trend is not in our society, but in the Western it is. So that diary, two things are there. That is only with the teacher and individual student. One student does not know about the diary of another student, and neither the other teacher who are teaching another subject to that class, they know about it. Only the particular subject teacher, they have that diaries with them, and they check it. What's the feedback of the student regarding it? And in this way, what happens? They receive feedback within a safe and secure context. What do you mean by safe and secure context? Mean where they are sure that their faults which are there, their weaknesses which are there, that is not kind of publicized, that is not shown to the other people. That's only between the teacher and the student. So that is safe and secure. Okay. Why? Because psychologically, the children will not feel good if they have some problems and it is known by the other students. They try to hide that, and so that kind of thing, they will be feeling secure. Feedback to learners can be linked to formal and informal assessment and can be given to learners in the classroom or during individual tutorials. Tutorials are small meetings between the teachers and one student or a few students to discuss their learning. Right. So what it is, feedback can be linked to formal and informal assessment. As we know, formal assessment is done through the test and the exam-like conditions. Informal assessment is done mostly given feedback on their performance at different times and can be given learners in the classroom or during individual tutorials. So classroom as a whole, or if it is individual tutorial, you have separated a group, they need help in a particular area and you are doing that exercises for them in order to make them understand better as they couldn't understand that in the class with the rest of the students. So that time you can give this, feedback to them. Right. We can also write regular feedback in the form of comments, grades, or marks on a learner's record sheet. That is the formal way which we do in the record sheet which we mention in. The learners can keep this sheet in their portfolio, or we might keep it with our records of their overall progress and achievement. We can use this feedback when we make our end of course assessment. Portfolio is the whole progress of the whole year. The student is accumulating different kind of works which they have done. So this feedback is also added with that. And in the end, when the course and assessment the whole year is done, there it is taken into consideration regarding giving the marks and how was the performance of the student. So that feedback is kept along with the portfolio while finalizing the final assessment of the year. Although we don't do it here, but these things which the points they are mentioning, you have to keep in mind. Why? Because they will be taking tests out of it. So practically, in our society, we are not doing that. But here we have to keep in mind how it is done in that society, and we will be tested in it. So the test point of view, we can keep that in mind. Practically, may not be that much useful for us. Why? Because we don't maintain the portfolios, and we don't do the feedback the way it is described here. So that is how it is. But anyhow, examination point of view, and not exactly the whole thing you can take from here, but some of the good points are there, like feedback you are giving. It should be motivating. It should be pointing out the weaknesses of the student. It should be like guidance towards the how they can improve themselves. Or it can be different ways. Orally, you can give the feedback. In written, you can give the feedback. But mostly, the feedback should be motivational and encouraging them, all right, to do good rather than criticizing them only. So that's the thing which you learn out of it. The rest is the whole procedure which is mentioned. It may not be necessarily we can adopt in our teaching styles over here in Sri Lanka. But examination point of view, we need to know it. Learners can also give feedback to their classmates. This is called peer feedback. Peer feedback can be oral or written and can cover the same focus areas as teachers' feedback. Peer feedback is useful for all learners. The learners who give the feedback reflect on mean think about the work their classmates have done. The learners who receive feedback are given information on how they can improve. The learners are often guided by feedback observation sheet. Young learners, though, are not able to give very detailed peer feedback because they are not yet able to think about their classmates' work very carefully. Peer feedback can be a positive effect on the classroom dynamics and can help train learners in skills they need to become autonomous. Now, feedback, one thing is peer feedback, which is from one student to another student. They go through each other's work and then they give the feedback about how this other student in the class has done the work. And in that way, what happens? It build up autonomous independence in them, right? And when the students among each other, they are giving feedback on their work, so it's a positive kind of attitude is built up in the classroom among the students. So they check each other work, and likewise they give feedback to each other on that. So it's creating a good atmosphere of learning in the classroom. Moreover, this feedback cannot be done with the young learners. Why? Because they are small enough that they are very small that they cannot think so much about others' performance to tell to the teachers that how they are, because still they are not, cognitive skills are not developed enough. Okay, right. So let's see what's on the next page. Anu, you are there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Not sleepy. Okay.
No. I'm
Right. So now we will see key concept and language teaching classroom. Wherever possible, feedback should be balanced, focused, and helpful. Now, in a very short way, they have given you a nice formula for the feedback. It should be balanced. It should be focused. What you want to tell, it should be clear. What are you talking about? Focused on the point which you are explaining to them. And helpful. Moreover, feedback should be kind of helping the student and motivating them to learn further and improve themselves, not discouraging them that what they have done or demotivating them. It needs to be balanced so that there is a comment and positive aspect of learner work as well as areas she needs to improve. Focus so that the learner knows exactly what good points are and what are the problems, what the problems are. Helpful so that the learner knows what steps to take to improve. This is particularly important for weaker or less confident learners. So it's nicely they have wrapped up in this first point the whole outcome of the feedback, why it is needed and how it has to be done, and what's the benefit of it for the learner. Let's see the second point. Feedback can be given at different stages of a lesson. For example, at the beginning of the lesson when we comment on work we have marked, during an activity while we monitor learners during pair work and group work, at the end of the activity when we tell learners how they did or correct their common errors. At the end of all the lesson we are marking some written work. So three stages we can do the feedback. One is the beginning of the lesson, when we comment that what type of work they are going to do and how it has to be marked and make them understand. Then during the activity which they go on, and pair work and group work or teamwork is there. So there the teacher is monitoring them, and each pair or each group the teacher tells that what's supposed to be done during that time. She or he guides the student. After that, correcting their errors at the end of work when it is completed. So correcting their errors and telling them how to improve it and how to, what are the things to keep in mind while doing this in the future. So there are three stages where we give the feedback. Now, during class or individual feedback, it is possible to revisit or recycle language that learners are having problem with. This is possible during class or individual feedback. That you can recycle mean you can teach that again, revise that what need to be, what was the thing confused or they couldn't do it well in that particular area. So you can revise that and provide the information regarding the problems, what they had while they were doing that and learning that particular thing. By providing learners with a written exercise or by including the language for review and oral activity in the following lessons. So further is now how you give them that to review the oral activities or in the language. It will be like small group feedback sessions are useful for the teachers and learners to give and receive feedback on class and teaching and learning. Feedback when you give in a small group, there are a group of 4 students, 5 students, they attentively listen to the teachers to understand as compared to the whole class when you give. So some may take interest in it, some may not. But if it is a small group you are giving the feedback, they will definitely focus on it and try to understand what it is. So it's a useful way in that way when a small feedback, which is particularly personal or sensitive, should be given to a learner privately, not in front of the whole class. Sensitive feedback to individual, like how it is sensitive where the students is doing some mistakes which the student should not do at that level. So if you tell this thing in the class, so the other student will not feel good about that student's ability. That they will say that this is the basic thing he doesn't know or she doesn't know. So in this way, if you give the feedback of that in front of the class, the student will be embarrassed. And that's the thing you should not do. So in that case, you can do this individual feedback. And why? Because those things need to be told to a student separately and not to expose it. Next one is written or oral feedback can be given to learners after formal assessment in addition to a mark or grade. This feedback should include guidance on how learners can improve there. That's the normal one which we do in the report card. We write that after the formal test is done and assessment is done. So there we do that and putting them that how they have progressed and what they're supposed to do further or whatever. So that's the usual one which is commonly done in all the schools. Learners' diaries provide teachers an opportunity of individual, private, two-way feedback, learners to teacher as well as teacher to learner. Learners' diaries, as we discussed, learners are maintaining a diary regarding the activities, the lessons, the material, the teaching methodology and all that, and then giving back feedback on that, which is only between the teacher and the student. No one else has access to that. So it gives an opportunity for individuals, private two-way feedback like between the teacher and the student. So learner diaries are also kind of a good way of feedback in a secured way, not letting others to know about it. And teacher only gets notice of that, what the students' feelings are about particular lessons or the teaching methods. Next one is learners often need guidance to help them provide teachers with a feedback. If we say to learners, for example, write some feedback for me about the lesson and about your learning style in your learners' diaries, you have 10 minutes. It is likely the learner will not be able to provide much useful feedback because its task is too general. It is better to give learners guidance or framework to work with. For example, we can review the activities in the lesson, what they did in each activity, and the types of interaction. We can then ask learners to write about which activity they prefer and why. Over a number of lessons, we can introduce other elements so that the learners become more familiar with reflection and with giving feedback. So here the point is, if you give 10 minutes, so it's a very short time. A student may not be able to write properly even, and you ask that to write some feedback for me about the lesson and about the learning style in your diary. So lesson and learning style, it's 10 minutes, not enough time for that. Moreover, that's very general topic. So they say you need to specify the area and give enough time to them that they should give your feedback with a cool mind rather than in a less time they have to talk about, they can't figure it out that from where to start. Okay, so specify the area what you want them to write about in the feedback. So that's a better way rather than giving a journal and a whole lot big area to them. So that's it for the TKT module 3. So your course reaches to the end, and in the end only Anu was there who reached to the last point. The rest all left behind. Anu?
I'm a good student, so that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were the